Okay, so our next exercise here, excuse me, is our walk cycle exercise. So what is a walk cycle? Well, it is a loop of a character walking. So very often when we watch cartoons or animations, when we see a character walking, very often it is compiled of a loop of arms, maybe arms waving a bit, and legs and feet moving along, walking along. And maybe the mouth and the face is changing, but the rest of the body is looped and looping along. So, which means we only need to create one cycle of a character's movement while walking, and then it can loop continue infinitely along, and we can simply just create a motion tween to change its positioning. So it looks like it is walking along. Okay, so we're going to build a character. The graphics have been created for us already, and you'll find it in the walk cycle required file folder. So if we look to our library, we've already got the graphics here. Now, this is a great example of actually the arm positions we won't be looking at. So in this exercise, we're going to be creating our own arm positions. But let's look at leg positions here. So we've got, let's zoom in a bit. We've got different leg positions here that have been drawn separately. So we're going to use these graphics to create the motion of our legs, but we're going to be using the bone tool to have the boy, our character's arms swinging while the character's walking along. And so this is a great exercise, gives us a little more practice with the bone tool. Now, I had mentioned in the previous exercise, the bone tool exercise, that that example is pretty complex. And I know a lot of you are not visual artists. And I'm going to assume that most of you are not visual artists in this class. But some of you may be. It might be a hobby of yours, or something that you're really interested in. But most of us aren't, including myself. I am not the best visual artist. I'm great at design, UI design, and layout, and web development, and building interactive applications. But a lot of the drawing is done by another person who's very good at it. So that's that being said, there are easy ways or easier ways to create some graphics, to create a character for, and I'm thinking about your midterm project where you need to create 2 characters. And you can keep it fairly simple. So this exercise is great at pointing at a few simple methods of making it look great still, but you're not overextending yourself and maybe entering territory that you don't have any experience in. So I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. In this exercise, we've got the graphics already built for us, but it's, again, a great example of seeing what needs to be built for our character, especially in our midterm project. Okay, so we've got the beginnings of our character here. Now let's create a new symbol, and we're going to call it moving leg 1. So go insert new symbol, and let's call it moving leg 1, and hit OK. And in the library, you can expand your leg positions, and we're just going to build our first leg without the rest of the body. Let's drag an instance of leg 1 to the stage. So here's our first leg. And let's use the Align panel to align it center. Okay, so we're going to build a frame-by-frame animation. And this is similar to that stickman exercise that we did in, I believe it was week 1. Or week 2, one of the two. But very early exercise. So we're going to follow those steps, those same steps, and we're going to use onion skinning again. So we can build this frame-by-frame animation, and it will look accurate and good. So in frame 2, insert a new blank keyframe. So right-click on frame 2 within your timeline, choose Insert Blank Keyframe. And drag an instance of leg 2 to the stage. Now just roughly position it for now. We need to turn on onion skinning to see what this looks like in comparison to our other leg. So we do that by clicking on this icon. And if I look to my timeline, it looks like I only want to see the previous frame. So that's what it's set to right now. We're seeing onion skinning of our previous frame. Okay. So now we can move this so it looks a little bit better, and it needs to be located around here. You can refer to the PDF for the exact positioning. Something like this. Okay, let's follow those same steps for the next position. Insert a blank keyframe in frame 2. And your onion skinning may now be expanded to show 3 frames. What you want to do is click and drag the left handle over 1. So we're only seeing 2. Now drag an instance of leg 3 to the stage, and it needs to look something like this. You can use your arrow keys to fine-tune it. Okay, same thing. Blank keyframe in frame 4. Drag an instance of leg 4. And it's going to look like this. Maybe something like this. Insert a blank keyframe in frame 5. And drag an instance of leg 5 to the stage. And it needs to look something like this. And one more leg position. Right click in frame 6, insert blank keyframe, and drag an instance of leg 6. And it should look something like this. The leg is coming up off the ground a bit. Okay. So you can turn onion skinning off now and hit enter on your keyboard and see what that looks like. It's very quick. We may slow this down. And actually, let's slow it down. That's what we'll do next. So right now, it's very quick because, well, our, oops. Our timeline's moving at 24 frames per second, and our walking is happening every single frame. So I want to extend each of these positions to be 5 frames long. So what you can do is highlight frame 1, the keyframe in frame 1, and hit F5 4 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah, I was just making sure that's correct. And let's do that to each of our keyframes. So highlight the next keyframe in frame 6 and hit F5 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do that to all of these. So this is gonna make it longer. It's a little choppy looking, but that's okay. There's something to be said for that style of animation. When we see it all put together, it'll look pretty good. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to scene 1. So we do that by clicking this back arrow. Puts us back in scene 1. And if you have an instance of that leg on the stage, you can delete it. It won't delete it altogether, because remember, our symbols are kept here in the library. Okay, let's animate our second leg. So we've got a second leg that's going to be doing almost the exact same thing, except do we need to build it from scratch? No, we can copy this first moving leg, we can duplicate it, and then just kind of make a few adjustments within the movie clip. So let's do that. Right click on moving leg 1 in the library and choose duplicate. And let's call it moving leg 2. And double click it to open it up. And what we want to do to stagger this moving leg. So if you think ahead a little bit, when someone's walking, when you're walking along, let's just say you start with your left leg. That means your right leg is behind the left leg. And then as you move along, your right leg reaches forward and the left leg is suddenly behind. So we want to stagger these two legs. Right now they're moving at the exact same time. And the way to stagger it is to take the first 15 frames and move them to the end. So if you highlight, and I'm holding down Shift, so I highlight the first frame, hold down Shift, select everything up to frame 15, just before this fourth keyframe here. And I'm going to choose cut frames. Clear frames is what we want. No, where is it? Maybe it's because I'm so zoomed in here I can't see. 1 second. Oh, that's why. Okay. So I'm going to just hit undo a little bit. Okay, so I've highlighted these and I'm going to choose copy frames. Cut frames does the same thing. You can either choose cut frames or copy frames. Then I'm going to right click again, and this is what I couldn't see. It was remove frames. Now highlight the frame just at the end, so at frame 16, and choose paste frames. Now when you hit enter, the motion is staggered. Okay, there we go. We got through it. Let's go back to scene 1 now. Our main timeline. And it looks like we have 2 blank layers here. I think we can delete one of them. Okay, so we've got this first layer. And let's drag an instance of moving leg 1 to the stage. You can just put it down here. And then drag an instance of moving leg 2 to the stage. They're going to be on the same layer. And let's zoom in a bit. And I'm placing them at the bottom of the stage. And I'm just positioning this one something like this. You can refer to the PDF, page 5, for those details. Okay. So if we were to hit Control Enter right now, we'd see our legs doing their thing. Looks like one of the legs is too high. Yep, the one in the back. So I'm just going to adjust that and test it again. Or was it the one on the front? I think it was. That looks better. You just want to try and get the soles of the feet roughly, and it looks like the one on the front still a little too high. So it looks a little more even. Okay, that looks good to me. Okay, so next we're going to move on to the arms. I'm just seeing, do we need to, we'll name the layers in a bit. Okay, so let's create a new symbol. Let's go Insert, New Symbol, and let's call it Moving Arm 1. And in the library, from the boy or the parts boy folder, look for boy arm 1. Let's see, do I have the right one? Yeah, okay. And we next need boy hand 1. And here we're going to start using the bone tool. So don't worry too much if the hand is on top of the sleeve like this. It's okay for now. So this is a great example of a more simpler version of an arm. So with the previous exercise with the mime, remember we had an upper arm, an elbow, a lower arm, and a hand. 4 armatures. But here we only have an arm and a hand. And this still works and it will look good. Okay, let's look to our timeline. We want our animation to be 30 frames long. So I'm just going to insert a frame. So our animation lasts for 30 frames. Let's turn on the bone tool. And again, if you don't see the bone tool, you need to click on these little 3 dots. And your bone tool would be somewhere in here, and you need to drag an instance of it or not an instance, just drag it over to your toolbar here so you can see it. All right, I'm going to turn the bone tool on, and I'm going to start just like with the mime. I'm going to start in the upper area of the arm right here, and I'm going to extend down to the top around the wrist. Okay. Now the hand is up front, so switch over to your selection tool. Right click on, I'm going to deselect everything, then just select the hand. Right click on the hand, choose Arrange, Send to Back. There we go. Now if you want, you can constrain this in the properties, but because it's so simple, it's manageable as is right now. But if you did need to constrain, now would be the time to add a constraint to the joint. But I know for a fact that we don't necessarily need to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is create a swinging arm. We can now, can we delete this layer? Yes, we can. So we have an empty layer now because a new armature layer was created when we created the armatures. So you can delete layer 1. If something disappears when you do that, then you need to hit undo and maybe step back a few steps. Okay, so let's create this swinging arm. We're going to make sure your playhead's in frame 1 and move the playhead to frame 8. And we're going to change its motion here. So we're going to have it swing back like this. And you'll notice that you've got a keyframe now. Changes the positioning. Move the playhead to frame 15. Bring the hand back down. Now move the playhead to frame 22 and have it swing forward like this. And then to frame 30, which should be your final frame, and have it swing back down. And if you hit enter, look at that, you get your swinging arm. And it's just going to loop. And it looks a lot smoother than our legs, but that's okay. It's two different methods. Okay, so now we need to build the second arm. And just like with the leg, we can duplicate moving arm 1. So I'm going to right click on moving arm 1, choose duplicate, and we'll call it moving arm 2. And this is actually easier. So double click on moving arm 2. Make sure you're in moving arm 2. How do I know? I look up in the upper left corner and it says moving arm 2. We can do something similar to what we did to the leg, except this is much easier. Let's highlight our frame span. So we do that by just clicking once on the layer name, and we can right click and choose reverse frames. And this will give the illusion of it being moving in the other direction. Now let's go back to scene 1 and see where we're at. So we've got our legs in place. Let's rename this layer legs and create a new layer called arm 1. and drag an instance of moving arm 1 to the stage. Now it's a little large, so we need to open our transform panel, which you can get to by choosing Window Transform, or it's this panel here on the right. And we're going to size it down. Make sure the width and height are locked and size it to 75% of its size. And you can position the arm kind of like this. We can always come back and reposition. And we want this arm to actually be the left arm of our character. So in your layers panel, drag arm 1 below legs so it's put on the other side. Now create a layer on top of the legs layer called arm 2. And drag an instance of moving arm 2 to the stage. And again, we need to open up our transform panel and scale it down to 75%. And it can be positioned something like this. I know we're going to want to adjust this, so that's okay. Let's test the movie. Control Enter. Okay, that's looking good for now. We're going to bring in now the boy's body, and we'll also animate the boy's head. All right. Let's create a new layer between the legs layer and the arm 2 layer. So we do that by selecting the legs layer and clicking on new layer, and we'll call it body. And drag an instance of the boy body symbol. So that can be found in parts boy, boy body. And it's a little too large, so we need to scale it down with the transform panel, 75%. And this is where we need to make some adjustments to how things are looking. So I know my arm here needs to move back a bit. So I can do that by selecting the arm. It might help that I turn off temporarily the body, so I can select both arms and just move them back a bit, and then turn the body visibility on again. Let's see how this looks. No, that's not working either. I'm going to drop it down. Look at this. So the white line here is almost level. Let's see if that looks better. We're getting close. Okay, I think that's close enough for me. And again, we may even adjust it more once the head is in there. So we're going to have our head kind of bopping along. So for that, we need to create a new symbol and animate it. So let's choose Insert New Symbol, and let's call it Swinging Head. And from the library, let's choose Full Head and bring it to the stage. Full Head. And I'm just going to center it to the stage. Align. Again, just a reminder, what buttons am I pressing here? I need to make sure Align to Stage is on. and I'm pressing align horizontal center and align vertical center. They're probably the most common align buttons that you're going to press. All right. So I want my animation to be 30 frames long, so I'm going to highlight frame 30 and hit F5. Now let's right-click on the head and choose Create Motion Tween. And let's move the playhead to frame 8. Select the head on the stage and open up your transform panel, and we're going to rotate the head 10 degrees. So click on the rotate value here, change it to 10. So now we get this smooth rotation happening here. Now, in the PDF on page 12, you're going to see a chart that tells you all the rotation values and the frame number that you're going to be inserting the rotation value on. So we're going to rotate the head along this path, this linear path. So now, next we need to move the playhead to frame 15, open up the transform panel, and select the head on the stage and change the value, the rotate value to 0. Then move your playhead to frame 22. Select the head on the stage, open up the transform panel, rotate it -10 degrees. Then move your playhead to frame 30, select the head on the stage, open up the transform panel and change rotate to 0. So now we get this kind of moving head. All right. So let's put that together. Let's add that to our main scene. So go back to scene 1 and drag an instance of swinging. Oh, not yet. We need to create a layer for the head. Create a new layer for head. Call it head. Bring an instance. Look at the size of this head. So we need to shrink it down to 50%. So select the head on the stage, open up the transform panel, and let's change, shrink it down to 50%. There we go. That's better. And let's position it like that so we see a bit of the neck. And you can have, our character kind of is slouching a bit, so you can have the head more leaning forward. If I were to test this out, that's what our character looks like. It's that simple. I know a professional artist drew this boy, but you can use the same principles with your own drawings for the midterm project. It'll look different, but that's okay. I'm looking for whether you know you've practiced the techniques. Okay, so next, what we want is we want our boy, we're creating a walk cycle here. Have we almost forgotten? We want the boy to be walking along from left to right. Because right now, he is just staying put, right? There's no movement. So for that to happen, we need to take all these layers, the head, arm 2, body, legs, arm 1, and place them within their own symbol. So they're packaged together as their own movie clip symbol. Okay, so for that to happen, and this is a technique we're going to use several times, I'm going to shift click all the frames in all the layers. So I'm going to select the first frame in the top layer, hold down shift, and then select the bottom frame in the bottom layer. And that highlights all of them. And I'm going to choose copy frames. Now I'm going to choose Insert New Symbol, and I'm going to paste them into this new symbol. And I'm going to call it Walking Boy. Right-click on frame 1 of our new symbol and choose Paste Frames. And that will paste all of our frames here. Now we've got Walking Boy that has all of our parts within it. So go back to your main scene, and we need to delete all these layers. Delete everything from the stage. And let's rename this single layer that we have here, Walking Boy. And drag an instance of the Walking Boy symbol to the stage. Now it can be anywhere, and let's just test it out. Hit Control Enter. There we go. Okay, so we want our character walking from left to right, and the only way for us to do that is to have completed those previous steps, packaging it all together into its own symbol. I want this animation to be 640 frames long. Wow, that's very long. How many frames do we get here? Actually, we don't get 640. Let's just say 570. Okay, so highlight frame 570 and hit F5. And let's move our playhead back to frame 1. And move our boy off stage left. Now move your playhead to the very end and right-click on the boy and choose Create Motion Tween if you haven't already. Hold down Shift and move the boy off stage right. And there is our motion tween path. And I'm going to hit Control Enter. Let's see what this looks like. There he is, moving along, nice and slow. And that is a walk cycle. So we've created a loop of our character walking along, arms are swinging, legs are moving, the head is bopping along. And our character starts in one position and ends up in another to make it look like he's walking. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions on that. Next week we're going to take what we've learned here and build a more complex looking animation with our character.